Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation. Despite this being the third film in the Genndy Tarkovsky only directed franchise, this is actually the first one that actually feels like him. In the first one, it really felt like a work for hire thing, and I mainly honestly saw it just because he was directing it, not because I really got the flair of Genndy within that. The second one you got a little bit more, but it still felt like an auteur being brought down by the studio system. Hotel Transylvania 3 doesn't feel that way. In fact, it really feels like a Genndy film. It's actually the first Hotel Transylvania film that he is a credited screenwriter on. I'm sure he did something with the story in the other two. This is the first one he is a credited screenwriter on. Not Robert Smigel, who helped write the first two, not Adam Sandler, who's credited on the last one. And the other credited screenwriter is someone who's written for animation before, given that it was Boss Baby, but you know, let's just let that go, and the Austin Powers films. But this feels more like a film that's made to be an animated film, written by people who understand the medium. There's way more kind of like funny, kind of sight, cartoony gags than there were in any other Hotel Transylvania film. So much so it almost feels like there's two separate movies at times. There's the one with the plot where Drac is trying to hook up with the great-granddaughter of Van Helsing. He doesn't know that, but she is trying to kill him because they're all sent on this cruise to be all together and stuff, and the cruise is really set up so that Van Helsing can kill all the monsters or something. And so he starts falling in love with this woman, and the basic plot of that is like not as much of a concern as it is to just have these like various sight gags, having Drac, you know, get ready and feeling all confident with Blobby, and him and Blobby walking, you know, all confidently, where Blobby, you know, gets knocked off the ship, where he gets hit by this thing, where he gets shot in the air when he gets in the propeller of the ship, like all these crazy things. And you could just have them walking by and Dracula just feeling all confident and stuff, but Genndy doesn't do that. This felt more like the guy who did Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff Girls. There's so many visual gags in it, and the designs felt more loose and more like Genndy than I've ever seen them in a Hotel Transylvania film before. This felt alive with his presence, and it's definitely the best directed of the Hotel Transylvania films, and this felt like a cartoon for animation people for once. It's the kind of animation that most, you know, people who aren't as into it will just sort of disregard and go, I don't know, it's like a fun kids movie or something. And I mean, that's not incorrect, I guess, but I think what Genndy does is he brings a lot of love and care to it. He, you know, none of the other Sony animated films that were supposed to be his original films have ever worked out, from Popeye to Can You Imagine. It almost feels like he's like, well, I have to get out, you know, something cinematically. Genndy Tarkovsky's too good of a director to sort of waste on a franchise like Hotel Transylvania. It's like, frankly, a fucking shame. But it sort of feels like he settled in and realized, like, you know what, if I'm going to be stuck here, I'm going to make an amazing Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation, basically. Like a franchise that most people are sort of past done with and disregarded at this point. He's really going to bring as much fun to it as he possibly can. And it's like the first one was work for hire. He's like, sure, whatever, at least I can get a movie and this one will be a hit, and then I'll have a name and I can do Popeye. Then Popeye didn't work out, and then he does 2, and 2 is like, he has a little more freedom, but he's still like kind of hampered down by it, and he goes, yeah, but after this one they'll definitely let me do something else. And then after they totally broke his spirit, he's like, well, I guess this is my life now. I might as well have fun with it. And that's sort of what the spirit through Hotel Transylvania 3, really. I mean, he does have some really inspired visual gags, like the idea of the Erica Van Helsing is always wearing white and Drac is always wearing black, and there's this cool sequence where they're dancing together and falling in love that really works. Genndy is so good at the design of this, of using the color in this, of having fun with this. I mean, it feels like the most Looney Tunes CG animated films that I've ever seen. Like, Warner Brothers Animation should be watching this and going like, oh damn, how did like Sony get to do this before us? I mean, it feels like very Chuck Jones kind of inspired going throughout it. I don't mean that to be like the one Looney Tunes animation director everyone knows. It actually does feel like Chuck Jones, a lot of like Wile E. Coyote, Roadrunner, stuff like that. Now, the script is really kind of boring, I'd have to say. You can tell it's storyboarded and written for storyboards, which is all the amazing gags that really highlight how great of a director Genndy is and how well he can work with animation. That part is truly inspired and almost like what I saw this movie for. And it does feel like I said before, 2 different movies. You get the plot-centric, boring kind of movie that you're like, okay, whatever. There's still a big dance sequence that saves the day, like a typical animated thing. It has all that crap in it. But then it has these like really fun visual gags that I was totally into throughout the whole film. But then there's sometimes this film can get that to work for it, really, more than it probably should, frankly. But a lot of times it did felt like a separate movie. Like my enjoyment of the film really came to a halt when that would come on. It didn't feel as interesting or as inspired as the rest of the parts. It just felt like well, this is what we have to do, but it still has like great Granddad Van Helsing, like has this like whole steampunk apparatus that feels right out of like something like Samurai Jack. It had a lot of things where it's like it really felt alive with imagination in this one. Like it's like, okay, they're like in a hotel Transylvania, I guess, but in this one it's like they're on this cruise that's going from the Bermuda Triangle to the lost city of Atlantis, which was like a monster city apparently, which they sort of like just like skip over really quickly. Like, yeah, there's just a monster city and then it got destroyed, and you're like, wait, hold up, why aren't you showing like flashbacks of that? Like, it's not really as much about Mavis and her boyfriend or husband and all that stuff. It's more about Drac, but I guess, or Dracula, but I guess he is the main focus of it now. Certainly, like, it definitely thinks you like totally have seen these movies more than just once in theaters and then just don't think about it till the next one comes out, like what I always do. And then they keep seeing this thing like when you have your zing, and I was like, oh, is that in the first one? I guess it is. They could really say whatever crap they wanted, and I'd be like, I guess that was in the first one or the second one, maybe? I don't know. I know there was a lot when the Sony hack happened about how Sony itself felt that they didn't treat Genndy necessarily right, and this feels like the crappiest way to do that with like the third Hotel Transylvania movie. But at the same time, it is like a hell of a fun animated film to watch. Visually, it really pops. Like, I really like seeing all those visual gags. Even when they're swimming, they have a thing where like they all try to imitate a seahorse that is like more about design than it is about story. This film still has a ridiculous voice cast. Adding this time was like Chris Parnell, who I thought was pretty good in this, as well as Catherine Hahn and Jim Gaffigan. Adam Sandler, I think, is probably better in stuff like this as a cartoon character. He's also better when he has very little creative involvement. I think he works better within this one than I remember the rest of them. Andy Samberg's barely in it. I still find it weird that Mel Brooks does Hotel Transylvania movies. I like seeing Fran Drescher and the rest of the crew, like Kevin James and all that. I'm like, whatever. But most of their dialogue was like pretty bad, and it does feel like a lot of times they're just sort of like just going through it a little bit. It felt a little more inspired than usual. It did feel more like a cartoon than I'd seen it before, and it was just things that were hinted at in two, and this feels like a natural evolution for this, and it kind of sets it apart because, you know, obviously this was like a horror cartoon, and it was like of the time where you had like Paranorman and Frankenweenie and the first Hotel Transylvania, and that was like the biggest hit of all of them. It's become this like sort of different, reliable, I guess, in terms of money franchise. But I think this like more differentiates itself, where I feel like I saw a different studio. You know, I see so many CG films, and like certainly I'm not saying Boss Baby was like a Pixar, but they're like different, but they're not like as radically different as this. And I think that's something like, if you're going to hire Genndy Tartakovsky, like why have him do like Hotel Transylvania 1, for example? Like, why not have him, you know, really show himself? Sometimes I don't get like, why hire an auteur to do a, you know, kind of a studio director job, basically? Like, why not just get a boring studio director, you know? And this was the first time I really understood, like, oh, this is why you wanted Genndy Tartakovsky for this kind of a movie. And that's like what's so great about Hotel Transylvania 3. I don't necessarily think it's an amazing like movie, but it's still a big kids animated film. It like ends on the Macarena and everything. Spoilers, I guess. It ends on the typical like big animated kids movie kind of Macarena ending. Like, it's just like not very surprising at all. It's just like what they did along the way was different and surprising and kind of actually pretty enjoyable, frankly. I really like the kind of more Looney Tune inspired style that Genndy really is bringing to this. I don't think a lot of animation directors can really have as much fun with something like this. I don't think a lot of animation directors that are as good as Genndy is are forced into situations like this, which is really unfortunate, but we are where we are. And much like I'm sure Genndy himself is thinking, like, I didn't think I'd still be here, but I am. Might as well sit back, relax, and have a good time with it. And I think, you know, maybe it's that I have sort of just like numbed to the pain of watching these films at this point, but I actually do think his direction is more inspired. I actually think this is the best Hotel Transylvania film, because it really feels like an actual cartoon. Like, this is the first one that I'm like, oh, this is why this is animated, not just because Dracula's in it and stuff. I don't know. Like now, like with this design, with the visual gags and everything, like this film, the only way you could make this film would be a cartoon, and that is absolutely awesome about it. I really like how fun this film was. I like how much more inspired it is, and it really felt like storyboard artists were like pitching, you know, visual jokes throughout it. I liked how well they used the blob character. Even Dracula felt like much more of a visual kind of character throughout it, and they're so good at some of the visuals in it. There's one thing where like Dracula's mouth is covered and he's sort of just communicating through eye movements, and I was like, you know, that's just a simple thing, but to really like be able to tell almost exactly what he's saying just from eye movements is like a pretty damn hard thing to do, and there's a lot of times they pull that stuff off really well. They're just like really good use of the characters and the character designs in this, and it feels a lot more redesigned for more of Genndy's style. It felt sometimes like I was watching a Dexter's Lab episode or a Powerpuff Girls episode he would direct, or Samurai Jack episode. This really felt like Genndy, and that's what I really liked about it. I finally got my Genndy Tarkovsky directed Hotel Transylvania movie, 3 Hotel Transylvania movies in, and I guess that's what I'm happy about while watching this film. They're not ever really great movies, but this is maybe as good as I could have ever imagined they would be, and I guess I'm just happy that I finally gotten to this point after watching this one, and after going through all of these, and after I originally just saw it just to support him and just because it was cool that he got a movie like this, never really wanting to see it. I kind of don't necessarily think that's good enough in terms of a studio that probably should have respected him more, but I'm not reviewing, you know, Sony's bad management decisions in this review. I am reviewing Hotel Transylvania 3, and Hotel Transylvania 3, Summer Vacation, is an awesome, fun, you know, summer animated film. It sets out to do exactly what it wants to do, and it probably does it way better than you'd ever expect, especially visually, especially if you love cartoons and you love Looney Tunes and you love that crazy, fun, visual joke kind of style. That this is one of the better examples of that I've seen from a mainstream studio in a really long time, and thankfully Genndy is ready to push us in that place that unfortunately Sony wouldn't let Popeye do, but they'll let Drac do, and I guess I just have to be fine with that. So if you've seen Hotel Transylvania 3, Summer Vacation, and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. I don't know if you knew this, but internationally it's actually called Hotel Transylvania 3, A Monster Vacation. So that's something.